Hello and welcome to this video. I want to tell you about a new project that I started. And to give you a little bit of background, last week I was at the Digital Humanities Association conference in Cork, at University College in Cork. And the theme of this year's conference was inclusivity across sectors. A lot of the talks that I attended were about open data, linked open data especially. I have mentioned open data previously. There is a directive from the European Union, which I've also mentioned before, but I'm just showing you again, about open data and the reuse of public sector information. So it basically means that if you have a project that results in data and you're publicly funded, you should make this data open so people can reuse it. And I can link it again in the description. It also mentions the F.A.I.R data principle, not in so many words, but it's down here. So F.A.I.R data is data that is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that has a lot of meanings, but this is a very important principle. And as a mapper on OpenStreetMap, I'm familiar. I work with this all the time, even though I didn't really know that there was a word for it, or an acronym in this case. But I have done this since I started mapping and since I've started uploading images to Wikimedia, just because it comes natural to me. It makes sense to have data linked and to have it findable. And that's one of the reasons why I upload my photographs of HolyWells to Wikimedia, because it's findable and it saves other people from traveling to the site, which is sometimes not accessible throughout the year, and so on. So this project that I've started is about HolyWells. And as I just said, I have done linked open data all the time when I'm mapping and when I'm contributing to Wikimedia. I didn't know it was a thing, but I have done it. So I've uploaded a lot of photographs of HolyWells to Wikimedia. Other people have done so too, not the amount that I've done, but it's a crowdsourced collaborative project, so it doesn't really matter how much. It's not about quantity in the end. It's not a competition who uploads the most. So this is the category for HolyWells in County Kilkenny, and some of them have their own subcategory. If there's more than one image, you're allowed to create a subcategory. And County Kilkenny is the county with the most photographs of HolyWells. If you look here, this is all the HolyWells in Ireland by county, and you can see the number here. Kilkenny has 23 categories, whereas the most, 9 seems to be the highest number in County Dublin, and then a number of files. And I think I sorted through all these, so if there are 2 files somewhere or 9 files, they are probably of different HolyWells, I think. I can't remember everything I did in the past. But if you click on one of these now, or let's say, I'll take this one, no. Like this. So this is St. Scoheen's Well in Freeneystown. Not very well known. And when I upload these, I also tend to add the template for the Sites and Monuments Records number, which is already linked to open data, because I'm linking to the Historic Environment Viewer. I try to do this. Of course, it takes a long time to, if you could just upload them there and be done with it. But if you add more data to it, it becomes more useful data. It also has the Wikidata template here. So it is linked to its Wikidata entry. And then in the structured data, you should also, well, it doesn't have that. It should. I'll just do that now. It should also have the Wikidata identifier of this specific, I'm not logged in, anyway, of this specific, well, there is a very active Facebook group about HolyWells in Ireland, and it's nice that people are interested in HolyWells, no doubt about that. But this doesn't fall under the F.A.I.R data because it's not terribly findable. It's not accessible because you have to have an account with Facebook to see them. It's not interoperable, And it's probably also not reusable because I'm not sure about the copyright license of these images on Facebook. I'm fully aware that people will just download them and use them, just as they do on Wikimedia, without giving credit to the original photographer. But they should, obviously, as should newspapers. There are plenty of local newspapers that use people's photographs without giving credit to them. And that's really just not on, that is theft of intellectual property. But with LinkedOpenData, you should be covered. You are associated with the username, or your photograph is associated with the username, so you could follow up on it and say, listen, I know you downloaded this from Wikimedia. Would you mind giving credit to me? So let's move on to Wikidata. What I did then is create Wikidata entries for all the HolyWells in County Kilkenny. It is very tedious, but I'm hoping that in the long run, people will benefit from it. You never know who will look for this data. I've looked for very obscure data, or let's call it information, on some topics, and I was very happy when I did find information online. There will be topics that are so obscure that you won't find anything online about it, but there could be people thousands of miles away looking for information about HolyWells in County Kilkenny. I don't know why they would, but they might. And if it's hidden somewhere in a Facebook group on Facebook, they won't find it. But if it's on Wikimedia, there's a much better chance for them to find it and to reuse it and to quote it properly and so on. So I had some help from Florian Thierry, who was my co-speaker in Cork, with creating this Wikidata project. And I have documented it all here, which is also very important to do. If you're doing an open data project, data set, there has to be metadata and it has to be documented what you mean with all your tags and so on. So I created this here. We start off defining the HolyWells in County Kilkenny, any HolyWells really, as part of an instance of that kind of defines what something is on Wikidata, as part of the HolyWell semantic concept. This means, for example, that some of the HolyWells are no longer there. They're covered up, they've dried up, they're not longer considered holy, or some of them have only been considered holy by very few people in the past. But by putting them in the semantic concept of HolyWells, they're all covered in that. And then I've added another instance of HolyWell. So this is because they were defined somewhere as HolyWell, they are defined as a HolyWell. And then you can also add a state of use, because a lot of the HolyWells, I'd say probably 90% of the HolyWells in County Kilkenny, this is only a rough estimate, I haven't run the numbers, are no longer in use as HolyWells. Some of them might still be in use as water sources, and a lot of them are just neglected, covered up, dried up, pumped, the water is pumped away somewhere else, but which still means they are a water source. And then you can also add to the instance of HolyWell the state of conservation, preserved, endangered, demolished, or destroyed. And this lets you filter through, which I haven't done yet because I haven't gotten the data for all of them, but that would let you filter through the data set and see how many of them are still preserved and in use, and so how many of them are already demolished and abandoned or something like that. And then a reference. So I used a lot of different sources. I used the Historic Environment Viewer, which is open data. It's not as open as OpenStreetMap, but it's still open data. It's CC BY 4. So I exported their dataset on HolyWells for County Kilkenny and started from that. They have 112 on their database. And then I checked against O'Kelly's Place Names of County Kilkenny, which is a book that was published in the 60s, I think, first, and then again in 1985, I think. And the Schools Collection on ducas.ie, which is very tedious. And the Historic Environment Viewer sometimes gives other sources. It gives Canon Carrigan's History of the Diocese of Ossory, for example, for the ones that they have worked on. The data isn't available for all the HolyWells in County Kilkenny, unfortunately. And sometimes they give more local sources, like, for example, some of the HolyWells are described in the Old Kilkenny Review, which is the journal that is published by the Kilkenny Archaeological Society. Sometimes there are older sources, the Journal of the Antiquaries of Ireland, or whatever it's called, which was the original Kilkenny Archaeological Society, founded in the 1840s, I think. And then they became so successful, they became the Royal Society of Antiquaries, and then they had to re-found themselves in Kilkenny in 1947-ish, 46. So they all had their own journals, and sometimes people published about HolyWells, usually in association with a church ruin. And then I also checked in chronological order the 6-inch Ordnance Survey first edition, 25-inch Ordnance Survey, and the 6-inch last edition Ordnance Survey, because sometimes some of these HolyWells are only marked as wells on these maps, sometimes only as springs, and sometimes as HolyWells. And sometimes it's a bit tricky to say, is this marked as a HolyWell, because it won't say HolyWell, it'll say Toberbride, for example, in Freshford. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I would have thought that was a HolyWell. I think everyone in Freshford would agree that it is a HolyWell. But on the Ordnance Survey maps, the font they use, the typeface, is not the Gothic font. It's a regular cursive font, and that means it's not considered a historic site, ergo it's not considered a HolyWell for some strange reason. But it is mentioned as a HolyWell in the school's collection several times, and in O'Kelly. So it is a HolyWell. It's part of the HolyWell semantic concept, and it has been considered a HolyWell in the past. And I think that's where all the sources so far, which is already quite a lot. Some of them are easy to search because they're available online, like the school's collection, but it's still not easy to search, but you can search to the text. You don't have to read the whole text. Some others are not as easy to search. For example, O'Kelly's Place Names of County Kilkenny. I have the book, so I just went by townland and checked his chapter on each townland that I knew there was supposed to be a HolyWell in, according to the Historic Environment Viewer. The problem with O'Kelly is sometimes he describes the HolyWell in a different townland for some reason, so you might miss some of them. There are scans of it online, which I actually scanned myself for the Kilkenny Archaeological Society, but sometimes I just like using a real book. The Carrigan is not searchable. It's not available searchable online, so it is not fair. It is findable, but it's not accessible, and it's not really interoperable if you can't search through it online. Only the 4th volume is available online, so it's very tedious to search through it. That's why I haven't finished it yet. So then, talking through the table further on, another instance of would be a religious site. So if the HolyWell is still used for veneration, which are very few of them, you could also define it as a religious site, which I haven't done for all of them yet. And then instance of water source, spring, water well, or pumping station. I usually did that in accordance to the old Ordnance Survey map. So if it is defined as a spring, let's say in the 6-inch first edition, I put in instance of spring, and stated in is the property, and then 6-inch first edition Ordnance Survey map, this one here. And I had to create Wikidata entries for all the sources as well, apart from the Historic Environment Viewer, because none of them were on it. And then you have a geographical definition. The country would always be Republic of Ireland, and then the located in the administrative territorial entity is always County Kilkenny. So that in the end you can filter out all the HolyWells in County Kilkenny, because there are more HolyWells on Wikidata already. And then I also usually added the civil parish, which I found through Log Anim, and the townland, for the ones where I actually knew where the HolyWell was, because there were some cases where I couldn't quite locate them. And then I also added the diocese, because HolyWells are usually a Catholic thing. I added the Diocese of Ossory to all of them. And then the coordinate location, which I either got from OpenStreetMap, because I had already mapped them, or from the Historic Environment Viewer, and I gave the source for all of them usually. Sometimes I used street address, usually for the ones where I couldn't quite locate where it was because they were only mentioned in the schools collection, and all you get are things like, in Murphy'sfield there was a HolyWell. Well, it gives you, sometimes it doesn't even give you a townland. You know which school the person went to that wrote this text, but that isn't necessarily the townland. That's usually the parish, unless it's like a boarding school. Then you're really in trouble. But I thought that maybe at some point I could check against the Griffith valuation to see if I can find where Murphy'sfield was. For example, I'm not sure if it was Murphy, but you know what I mean. And then I have another one, a property described by source, and that lists all the sources this HolyWell is mentioned in, no matter whether it is mentioned as a HolyWell or a well or a spring. So if it is only marked as a spring on the first edition Ordnance Survey map, it's still going to be listed under described by source, even though it's not described as a HolyWell. Then next property would be image. So that's an image that is on Wikimedia. Video, I only have videos of 2 HolyWells so far, and you can link that. They're also from Wikimedia. Sometimes if there is a category, a whole category for a HolyWell, like here, you can link the whole category. And then external data available at URL. That's a bit of a mouthful, but we decided to use that, well, Florian decided to use that for the Sketchfab links. You can't link to Sketchfab directly from Wikidata because it is not an open data source. But you can link to it using this external data available at URL. So Sketchfab is a repository of 3D models. I have made 3D models of a couple of HolyWells using photogrammetry, and I will do more. And you're very invited to do it yourself. I have videos about how to do that on my channel, and we can link them there. And you could link, if another person does a 3D model of the same HolyWell, we can link both. There's no problem with that. And then, maybe I should have put that further up in the table, named after. So a lot of HolyWells are obviously named after saints, Toberpatrick or Toberbride or St. Kieran's Well or whatever. The most common one, I think, is Our Lady's Well or Lady's Well in County Kilkenny. I haven't run the search yet. We might do that later. So you could filter once your database is complete and you have added this to all the HolyWells. You can run a search and see how many wells are named after the Virgin Mary, how many are named after Bridget of Kildare. And you could also generate a map and color code them, for example, to see, okay, all the St. Kieran's wells are along here and all the Bridget's wells are along here. I don't think there's going to be a meaning in the distribution. Some of the HolyWells also had different names before. Older saints' names that have gone out of fashion, or people have forgotten about the saint and they're just generally called Patrick's Well then. Or I have a suspicion that there's something going on with places called after St. Michael, that they were actually different saints who have been forgotten about, but that's a completely different topic. I kind of also wanted to tag or to put in the database when the pattern was held. I haven't quite come up with the perfect solution for that, so for now I'm suggesting open days as a property. It's a bit more complicated because sometimes it's not a specific date anymore. Like Our Lady's Well is usually around the 15th of August, obviously, because that's her feast day. But sometimes it could be the week before or the week after, and some dates are a bit more flexible. There was one Saint Columba, and his feast day or his pattern day was the second Sunday in June, I think. That's a bit more difficult to define in code. Anyway, and then we have the reference numbers. I think that's what they're called. We have the Irish Sites and Monuments Record number, which for Kilkenny always starts with KK. And then we have the OpenStreetMap node ID. Sometimes way ID. If they're mapped as a way, then it would be way ID. And the Wiki Loves Monuments ID, which some of the HolyWells have not all of them, because you're supposed to only create the WikiLoves Monuments ID for wells that are accessible to the public at all times. So these are the tags we can use. It's a lot, but if you fill it in all of these for every well, you're going to have a tremendously great database. So let's look at an example. Open that in a new tab. So Toberbride is one I visited last week. So I'll talk you through the statements again. So, oops, I have to open this. So first you start off with a label, which is kind of like a name, but it's in some cases a name doesn't really apply. It is okay for HolyWells, but some things it's not a name. Anyway, so Toberbride is one of the names in English. Sometimes they have more than one name. So for example, if it's a St. Patrick's well, you might spell it st.patrick' as well. You put that under label, but then you might also want people to find it when they're looking for Saint Patrick, if it's spelled out and not abbreviated. So you have to put that in under also known as. And then sometimes, not in this case, I found an Irish name in the sources, and I put that in under Irish. And then we have a description, which is I only have put down in English because my Irish is not good enough. And then we have the definition here, defining it as a holy well, instance of holy well semantic concept. They all have that, hopefully. And then we have it just defined as a holy well, and that's the reference here is the historic environment viewer. And then I have it also defined as a holy well in use, and the references there are the 3 Ordnance Survey maps, because they are on the maps in the Gothic typeface, and sometimes you would find them as, I don't know, Toberbride site of, and that means it's no longer in use. But because it doesn't say that, I put it down as in use. I should probably add that. I'm not sure if it is in use still. I don't think so. It didn't look like it. But that's something, I don't have to do this all by myself. It's a collaborative project. So if anyone else wants to add anything to it, please do. Then we have 2 images. The video is named after Bridget of Kildare. It's in the Republic of Ireland, County Kilkenny, civil parish Callan. Townland is Bonta Commons. Don't know why that isn't there. Diocese is Ossory. We have the coordinate location, and then we have all the sources here. So it's in a lot of them, and that might not be all of them. There might be some local history book in Callan that describes it as well. And then it has its own commons category and the 3 identifiers. So that is Toberbride near Callan. Another one is also in Callan. I don't know why I chose 2 in Callan. Is St. Augustine's well in Abbey Meadows, or the Abbey Meadow in Callan. So we have the English name with Saint spelled out, and then Saint abbreviated with a dot, and Saint abbreviated without the dot. It's defined as a holy well. I should add that it's in use still, at least as a water source. We have an image here. It's named after Augustine of Hippo, I presume. With the St. Kieran's wells, there's more than one St. Kieran, and under named after, I chose the same Kieran for all of them, presuming they're all named after the same one. I might have chosen the wrong one. It's very difficult to say, which St. Kieran they're named after. Then the location, blah, 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 diocese, coordinate location. And here we do have a Sketchfab model. If you add the Sketchfab model, you have to use the full link, not the short link that Sketchfab provides. They're blacklisted because I think Wikidata doesn't like short links. And then we have the sources here. You can also add as a source local knowledge, and there are 2 local. Let's add that here. Let's try local knowledge. So you have local knowledge, body of general knowledge specific to a locale, conferred to individuals familiar with the place. So this is when you've gone there and you've talked to people and they've told you about it. And then the second one is local knowledge of your native or home district or region. This is when you've found out yourself. So basically, when you've done a survey of the HolyWell, you can use this, which I have done. So I will add this. It doesn't like that. Nah, never mind. And state of conservation preserved. I have that here. I could have had that up here under instance as well. The commons category and the identifiers. So these are two examples. And if I go back to just to show you because it's linked LinkedOpenData, show you how it's linked. This is this one here on Wikimedia. And you can see that on the right here, it has the info box, Wikidata info box. So in the source code, this is what the template looks like. And then you just, oh no, this has added it automatically because, oh yeah. So sometimes it interlinks it by itself because I have added, where's it gone? The commons category here, it automatically, it seems, added the Wikidata info box here and linked it to the correct one. Because the Wikiverse is already very interlinked, sometimes it does some of the work, so you don't have to do it. It is already quite interlinked, so there are bots doing this, I presume. So that's handy. You can add it manually though. I'll just try again. I think there would be an extra statement here saying Wikidata ID or something. And then you add this number here. And then it adds it connects it, it links it. So I have this database now. I could run a search. So this is a link that Florian sent me. If I run this is all, off-putting because it's very, it's code, but it looks for an item label, and other stuff. And yeah, anyway, it looks for, this is instance of HolyWell and HolyWell semantic concept. So if I run this, it should show me how many there are in this project, because they're in the semantic concept thingy. So that's 142. If you remember, I told you that the historic environment viewer has 112. So that's already 30 more than they have identified. Their definition of HolyWell might be slightly different than my definition of HolyWell. My definition of HolyWell is whatever people consider a HolyWell or considered a HolyWell in the past. There's one in the city of County Kilkenny that is not very old. Like, if you look at the old maps, at the Ordnance Survey maps, some of the HolyWells have only been declared HolyWells, I'd say, late in the 19th century. So this whole theory of, they all have pagan background, no, they don't. They're just water sources, and some of them have been declared HolyWells in the 19th century, so people wouldn't soil them. And because if you declare something holy, people will respect it, or at least they did in the past, not so much anymore. So some of these are only considered HolyWells by very, very local people. There's also one in Castlecomer, where only the people living across the road consider it holy. It's marked as a spa well on the Ordnance Survey maps. But it is holy to these people, so it is a HolyWell in my opinion. I don't care what the Ordnance Survey says, because it has a meaning for them, for these people, and you have to respect people's feelings and opinions about HolyWells, even though I don't believe for a second that there's anything holy about this water. But you still have to consider their opinions about it. So 142. And then we also have this query builder. So for example, when I was trying to tidy up the database, I knew that I had added the Wikimedia Commons category to some of them, where I had Wikimedia Commons categories, but sometimes I had forgotten to add the image. And rather than going through 142 datasets, you can just search for that So for example, we're looking for HolyWells in County Kilkenny that have a Wikimedia category but no image statement. So it won't find any now because I've already tidied it up. I'm just going to show you how you can do that. And you can search for anything depending on all these properties. So the first property is instance of HolyWell, obviously. And then it has to be in County Kilkenny, so that's the property is located in the administrative territorial entity. And the value is County Kilkenny. And they also have to have the Wikimedia Commons category, regardless of value. And they are without, that's the thing now, the property image, regardless of value. So this should hopefully give me 0. Thank God it did. But I used it to add a lot of other data. Like, for example, sometimes I want to search for the ones where I didn't have the O'Kelly place names source. So I have HolyWells in County Kilkenny. I want to search for the ones that don't have the described by source matching place names of the place names of County Kilkenny. So sometimes you see here, I'll type that in, the place names of County Kilkenny. So the label is, I put in the author's name, at least his last name, O'Kelly, the place names of County Kilkenny. But then, also known as, I put the same in without the author's name. And it will find them either way. And maybe I should also add just place names of County Kilkenny, because then I wouldn't have to type the in. For Carrigan, for example, there are 4 volumes. Carrigan, let's say 3. I created these Wikidata entries, so I created one that is just, the label is just the history and antiquities of the Diocese of Ossory, full stop. And then I added 4 for each volume. And because I don't want to have to type the history and antiquities of the Diocese of Ossory every time I want to fill in a source, I also gave it this short name here. So for Carrigan, I can just type in Carrigan 3. And it'll autocomplete that to the history and antiquities, blah, 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 blah. So the place names of County Kilkenny. So this will find all the ones that don't have that as a source. That could, of course, now be either because I forgot to look for it or because they're just not mentioned in O'Kelly. So there are quite a few. Unfortunately, it doesn't say anywhere how many there are. Let's go back to this search and search them again, the 142. So this down here on the left, you see it is presented as a table, but you can actually also create a map out of them. So if I click on map here, so this is a map that is generated from the coordinates. Of course, there are some, like 3 maybe, in the database where I haven't coordinates, and sometimes there are only estimates, because I'm not quite sure if a HolyWell is only described in the schools collection. Their location description is quite vague. So again, it can't be something like in Murphy's Field, or there is a math path from A to B and along there is a HolyWell. Very helpful. First of all, I don't know where this math path is, and how am I supposed to know where the HolyWell is then? There's one like that somewhere between Kells and Newtown. Don't know where it is. Then sometimes I use the location of a spring that's on the Ordnance Survey map, because I presume that must be it. but I could be wrong, of course. But what you can do for these is down here in the coordinate location, you can add a qualifier, precision, also called sourcing circumstances, and then you can add something like circa. So that's just an approximation, and I've done that for a couple where I'm not entirely sure. So you could filter these out as well. Just gonna cancel that. So there's the map, and you can click on the dots and it gives a link to the image, the coordinates, and also a link to the Wikidata entry, of course. So there's more linked data here. So that's the map. It can also create charts and tree maps and all kinds of things. So I'm not quite sure what they're good for. You can also create image grids. It always shows this image here twice from Bastion Fort in Goran. I don't know why that is. But these are some of the images, and it creates this grid randomly. This is also a duplicate. Some of them are duplicates. I don't know why it does that. There's another thing that you can do, which is filter by named after, by the etymology of the name of the HolyWell. And we will do that next. So as I understand it, SPARQL is the query language code, whatever it's called, to search for these things on Wikidata. I have really no experience, no training in coding or anything like that. Sometimes if it's not too difficult, and this is meant to be very easy, I can look at the code and adapt it to my needs, which I did in this case. Like, I only looked at it today for the first time, and computer science was one of my worst subjects in school, apart from PE. And I'm trying to filter by the etymology of the HolyWell name. So the origin of the name. So if it's St. Patrick's Well, it's named after St. Patrick. If it's called Toberbride, it's named after eyes or eyesores. And if it's called Toberbride or something, it's named after heads or headaches. It means the well of the head, but it usually means it is a cure. The water is supposedly a cure for headaches. So I have to still work on that a little bit on the database side, but I want to show you what you can do with this data, and I think it's pretty cool. So there are some examples here on the Wikidata help pages, this one here. And I found one that I thought I could adapt, and it's the one that is popular eye colors among humans. So you have an instance of, and then you have one characteristic that you can filter by. And this I thought would work. And this is what that looks like. Let's start from the top. The first line describes the title of the search basically, and it goes up in the name of the tab, which you can't see because I've chosen not to show what's at the very top of my screen. And then it also explains that it illustrates a bubble chart view and a count. And in the fourth line, it says default view. I suppose I could make that a bit bigger. In the fourth line, it defines the default view, which is a bubble chart. Remember, when I showed you earlier, it showed the table view, and there are a lot of other options you have, and one of them is a bubble chart, and it's very pretty. And then in the fifth line, it defines the things that you want to select for this graphic. But these labels you can choose yourself, because these are like words that humans can understand. Whereas Wikidata works with these numbers, the properties, they all have numbers, and the qualities. I suppose that's what Q stands for. I'm not quite sure what the Q stands for. And it's usually a pair of a property and a quality, or a value, or whatever it's called. But it always starts with the Q. So I think Q1 is Earth. I'm not quite sure. But Q5, it seems, is human. And if you hover over it, it shows you that. Shows you the label, human, the identifier, Q5, and the definition it has on Wikidata. And that defines it as a human, and that's why they used this question mark human. That's the label they give it, because it makes it easier to continue on with the code using words that people can understand. And then also, you're looking for humans with a certain eye color, and that's apparently the property for eye color is P1340, and you define that as eye color because that's what you have up here. And then it does something here. I haven't a clue what that does. Apart from that, it gives out the results in English, of course, because a lot of the basic entries in Wikidata have different languages. I don't know, can I click on this? No. But this will have a definition in all kinds of languages on the Wikidata page 4, the Q5, which I can't open now. Just believe me. Whereas the HolyWells usually only have the English definition. And then it will group them by the eye color, which we have defined here, blah, 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 and count them. And it will also turn the actual eye color into an RGB hex code, which I don't need for the HolyWells. But it makes sense if you're trying to show eye color that you actually use the actual color. You know, it makes it more understandable. So that looks like this. I mean, nobody has this kind of eye color, but it's, you know, defined as a brown color, and it kind of corresponds with the name somewhat. So this is what that looks like. Most humans have brown eyes. A pair of brown eyes. Ba-doomts. And I just adapted that for HolyWells. So the first instance defines it as part of the HolyWell semantic concept. And then the second one defines them as in County Kilkenny. And then the third one looks for the named after property, which is the etymology. So I can run this now. And I'll do that here, pressing the play button. Ta-da! Isn't that so pretty? So, as I suspected, most HolyWells in County Kilkenny are named after the Virgin Mary, and they're all usually called Mary's Well, not very often, but usually called Lady's Well or Our Lady's Well. And then I think the next one, size-wise, would be Bridget of Kildare. So that's 2 women at the top. Woohoo! 3. I think I could have modified that a bit because some are called Well of the Tree and some are called Well of the Rag Tree or just Well of the Rags. And I presume they're called that because there's a rag tree nearby. On Wikidata, they're usually called Clutie Tree, so that's down here. And then next one, it goes like in a spiral, kind of. St. Patrick would be the next one. F.A.I.R. Some are called after a church, so they would be Church Well. And then quite a few are named after St. Columba, and 2, I think these are only, well, it does actually show the number there when you hover over it. So 3 are named after Columba. 3 are named after Moling. That's like the one in St. Mullins, but that's not in County Kilkenny, that's in Carlow. Kieran, 3 after the Holy Trinity, 3 after the True Cross, 3 after Clutie Trees, 3 after John the Baptist, and so on. And the smaller the dots get, the fewer. So some are just named, there's one Ward Well, and I haven't actually identified what that is. It does abbreviate the labels, so some look a bit weird. Like this is a hawthorn tree. I think it's called Toberbride, and that's of course a hawthorn tree, and it refers to the Latin name. So I could have, like they did here, somewhere. Did I not do that? Auto language English. Didn't do that. Should have done that. Should have translated that into hawthorn tree. And so on. So that is pretty cool. So that's the bubble view. And I wish I could have used this as the thumbnail for the video, but I didn't want to give it away. So I'm using something else. So that's the bubble chart view. We could do a table. Boring. But it gives you the count. So there are 18 named after Virgin Mary, 6 after, we've gone through the numbers already. But if you wanted that in a tabular form, you would have that here. And there are only 56 results. And if you remember, we had, or maybe that's probably, I don't know if that's 56 in total. Probably. So I haven't added the etymology to all of them yet. And then you could also have, it doesn't allow for the map view, a bar chart. It's also a little bit boring. It's just the same as before. It's just in a bar diagram. So the Virgin Mary is the highest and so on and so forth. But that's something, I think that's pretty cool that you can do that. What you could also do, if you don't like the English language, you could change this here to any other language. Let's say Irish, which the language shorten thingy where it is EN here would be GA. Change it to DE for German or IT for Italian or whatever, but since it is an Irish topic, might as well use Irish. And run this again, and that will change the labels to Irish, where there is an Irish label given. So you can see all the ones that have a Q here, they don't. And you see that a lot of them, of course, start with Neve, because a lot of the saints, that would be their name. There should be some starting with San, there's one here, San Francis, because that's St. Francis. In case you didn't know, the saints' names that are for foreign saints, like St. Francis or St. Nicholas. Can't remember what he's supposed to be. It's up here somewhere. They start with San, and all the locally grown saints, they start with Neve. Or they don't have the Neve in the name, like Moling, Columkill, Kieran. A lot of times they don't even have that, because they're just known by their Christian name, I suppose. I wonder if, let's say, Ukrainian? Is that? I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's what it would look like in Ukrainian. And there are even more missing, of course, because they're Irish saints. Why would they have Ukrainian names? But it's very inclusive. You know, it is interoperable and reusable in lots of languages, and that's one of the things that we're looking for. So what's left to do, you may ask? Please don't. It is kind of a never-ending project, I suppose. I will go out, visit HolyWells, photograph them, do photogrammetry and all that, and add that to Wikimedia and to Sketchfab. I would have done that anyway, even without this database. What I want to do is add the missing Carrigan sources, which, as I said, it's quite tedious to find because the texts aren't OCR'd online. That would be such a good project if somebody scanned, well, there are actually scanned, if somebody, there was a grant maybe, to do OCR on these scans so they become searchable. That would be tremendous. There is a DVD or a CD-ROM published in around 1995. There was some anniversary for Callan Carrigan, and they produced a CD-ROM with an index. I don't have a CD-ROM player, and I'd say a lot of people don't. So that did make it more findable, but it's no longer accessible, of course. So that will be something to do. What I also want to do, and I don't know if you know you can do that, is report these place names to LogAnim. But that is something you can do. You can report place names to LogAnim, and they are using OpenStreetMap, of course, as their map. And then I could add the LogAnim ID in Wikidata. That is a statement that is possible. LogAnim ID. I could also add that to OpenStreetMap, of course, as we have done for some of the townlands. And that would be a very good deed to do. And it is only 142. And I can only do that for the ones, so it's fewer than 142 because I can't do it for the ones where I don't exactly know where they are. But that would be a good thing to do at some point. And if you are watching this and you find that I haven't done it and you want to help, please do. Because they all should have identifiers, there shouldn't be any duplicates created, I think. But I'm not really under any illusion that anyone will do this, apart from myself. But it'll keep me busy, and I'm learning so much about computer stuff and open data and HolyWells and County Kilkenny, and I wouldn't want to miss out on that anyway. And because this is about linked data, which isn't confined to the Wikiverse and OpenStreetMap, what the people behind the schools collection could do, the National Folklore Collection, is, I don't know if they have the option, but if they could add markup to their texts, so you could search for certain places. For example, this is one of the HolyWells that I showed you earlier, Toberbride near Callan. This is one of the texts in the schools collection that describes the HolyWell. So it describes the HolyWell and the pattern at the HolyWell here. And because there's so many Toberbrides, in case people weren't completely sure which one it is, they could add the Wikidata identifier to this text for wherever it mentions the HolyWell here. And that would make it clear that this specific HolyWell is meant. And you could, if you link this to Wikidata, people could click on that and they would know, okay, this is the location. These are all the other sources, they mention this, and so on. And that would be really good. The same on Loganum, they could use this as well and link to the Wikidata entry. But of course, this is all grant-based and it will probably never happen. I'm just saying it is possible. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was very long, but it is quite a complex topic and I hope I covered everything. It's hard to envision the person who is going to be watching this and how much previous knowledge they have about the topic. So I hope I made it accessible to everyone's previous knowledge, I hope. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you have learned something and maybe it has motivated you to do something about it, even if it is just in the future, not uploading your photographs of HolyWells to Facebook, but to upload them to Wikimedia and then use the link from Wikimedia on Facebook, which is a completely valid thing to do. And you would create so much better data and fair data. So thanks very much again, and see you again soon. Slán go fóill.